Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Dreams. Excited to have you all here on my YouTube channel. Today's fanfiction topic is, what if Naruko was born an Uchiha? Part 6. Disclaimer, this content is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in this video. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. No. Why? What happened? Naruko stood in front of Hiruzen, her usually bright expression clouded with confusion and disbelief. She hadn't uttered a single word since he revealed the truth about her parents. The room fell into an uneasy silence, the tension thick enough to be felt by everyone present, even the Anbu. Concern grew as Naruko remained motionless, her gaze distant, lost in thought. The very air seemed to grow colder when she finally closed her eyes. A voice, not her own, echoed in her mind. Take action. They deceived you. They kept your true heritage hidden. You believed they cared for you, that they loved you, but now you see the truth. They have concealed this from you since the very beginning. Naruko, please understand. We did this to protect you, Hiruzen said gently, hoping to ease her turmoil. But Naruko remained unmoved. Lies, she whispered. How is hiding a father's identity from his child an act of protection? How does keeping the existence of a powerful spirit sealed within me make things better? How do secrets, no matter their intent, justify anything? Deep within her mind, another presence stirred. Who are you? Why do you speak to me at times like this? Naruko questioned, not yet within her subconscious, but focused inward. I am the one sealed inside you. I am the Kyuubi no Yoko. So? You're not just some mindless force? What are you suggesting, human? To have thoughts like yours, you must have feelings. You must have experienced betrayal. I can sense the anger, but there has to be a reason behind it. What makes you think I carry such trivial emotions? Because you always emerge when I feel anger, sadness, betrayal. The Kyuubi's presence flared. I seek freedom. I will break this seal, and when I do, this village will fall. Naruko inhaled sharply. Maybe. Or maybe not. Listen. No. You listen to me. This seal will not hold me forever. It is only a matter of time. And the fact that you bear the Uchiha's gift only makes it easier. Naruko was jolted from her thoughts when Kakashi placed a firm yet reassuring hand on her shoulder. The conversation with the Kyuubi had been unsettling. There was no sense of camaraderie between them, only the beast's unwavering resentment. Yet, something about its words lingered in her mind. The Kyuubi was said to be the most powerful entity in existence, a force of nature known only for destruction. But Naruko had spent years hearing tales of its wrath. Was it really just a being of chaos? Or was there something more, something lost in time? She resolved to find out. Opening her eyes, Naruko's gaze burned with the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The air around her crackled with energy, and beyond the office windows, storm clouds gathered. What had been a clear, peaceful day suddenly shifted into a downpour of heavy rain and roaring thunder. Lightning streaked across the sky, striking parts of the village with an intensity that had not been there moments ago. Kakashi's eyes widened. Naruko? What is this? What are you doing? The storm had come the moment she had opened her eyes. Electricity flickered across Naruko's body, dancing along her arms as if responding to her emotions. Her frustration was evident, and it was unlike anything they had seen before. Is this from her Mangekyo? The same thought crossed everyone's mind. They had only heard of its abilities, but to witness such raw power firsthand was something else entirely. Before anyone could react, Naruko moved with unprecedented speed. In an instant, she gripped Hiruzen's robes and pulled him up from his chair, pressing him against the wall. Normally, Hiruzen would have never allowed such a thing, but in this moment, he did not resist. The Anbu and Kakashi tensed, ready to intervene, but a subtle motion from the Hokage signaled them to stand down. He understood, Naruko was not acting out of malice, but from deep pain. How could you? Tears welled in Naruko's eyes as lightning flared around her, the storm outside growing even fiercer. Hiruzen's voice remained calm. Naruko, you need to take a deep breath and compose yourself. I am calm. But how could you all keep this from me? I had a right to know. You had no right to hide this. She finally released him, stepping back. The storm began to settle, the lightning flickering out as her Mangekyo faded, leaving behind her 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Her voice trembled. I trusted you. I cared about you all. And yet, you kept the most important truths of my life from me. Do you even understand how much it hurt? To believe my parents abandoned me? That my family had cast me aside? Hiruzen hesitated before responding. Is that what pains you most? You are not angry that Minato sealed the QB inside you? Naruko's expression softened, but her tone remained firm. No. I understand why he did it. It brought me loneliness, yes, but it was done to protect the village. What I cannot accept is the deception. I could have handled the truth. I just wanted to know why everyone looked at me the way they did. I deserved that much. Hiruzen sighed, his expression filled with regret. We only wanted to protect you. Naruko remained silent for a moment before whispering, maybe. But at what cost? How does knowing about my parents change anything about my safety? Hiruzen was momentarily taken aback. Naruko had a valid point. They could have told her the truth while still keeping it a secret from the public. It was meant to protect you from Minato's enemies, so they wouldn't target you. Keeping your Jinchuriki status a secret was an effort to give you a chance at a normal childhood. Oh, really? Because normal children are kept locked away in their homes until they're 6? Was that for my protection or the village's? Did you ever truly trust me? Or was it all just an act to keep your so-called weapon in line? Naruko-kun, you are not viewed as a... Stop lying to me. She interrupted, frustration evident in her voice. I've read enough to understand the truth. Jinchuriki are nothing more than strategic assets to a village. No one sees them as individuals. Even I was treated that way. And as for my father's enemies, you don't even believe your own excuse anymore. I could have known the truth, and the secret would have remained intact. Knowing about my parents' sacrifice could have helped me. Naruko-kun, please. Forgive me and trust. Sorry, Hokage-sama, but I can't. At least not right now. Everyone in the room stiffened at her words. It was a clear sign of how deeply hurt she was. Naruko had always referred to Hiruzen and those close to her with warmth and respect, but now, the way she distanced herself spoke volumes. Oh, and don't worry, she added before disappearing in a swift movement, her voice laced with sorrow. Your so-called weapon will remain loyal to Konoha. Dishonoring my parents' sacrifice is not something I would ever do. Hiruzen lowered his head, a deep sense of regret washing over him. Kakashi remained silent, unsure of how Naruko would see him now. He knew that things had changed, perhaps permanently. Could they ever regain Naruko's trust? Or would she always hold resentment for the deception? Kakashi. Watch over her. Will you? Hi, Sandaime-sama. As Kakashi left, his thoughts were conflicted. He had followed orders, just as Shisui had, but neither of them had truly agreed with the decision. For 11 years, Hiruzen had convinced himself that he had done the right thing, yet today, that certainty had crumbled. How had a single conversation changed everything? Hiruzen was known for his unshakable resolve, yet here was Naruko, making him question everything he had believed. He needed to find a way to make amends. Naruko's home. Kakashi knocked on the door, and Sasuke answered. It was clear from her expression that she immediately sensed something was wrong. If Naruko was inside, she was avoiding company. If she wasn't, then she likely wouldn't be found unless she wanted to be. Either way, Kakashi knew he needed Sasuke's help. He didn't plan to tell her everything but wanted her to be aware that Naruko was going through something difficult. Is Naruko here? No. She hasn't returned since she left with you this morning. What happened? Sasuke's expression turned serious, realizing the situation was more than just a casual visit. Kakashi sighed. Well, in a way, this might work out. She's going to need you. Sasuke narrowed her eyes. What did you do? Hey, who said it was? Sasuke simply gave him a look, one that made it clear she wasn't going to accept any excuses. If something had happened to Naruko, she wasn't about to let it slide. Even before they had grown close, she had always been protective of Naruko, even if she hadn't always shown it outwardly. All right, Kakashi relented. She found out some important information today. And she's pretty hurt. She even started addressing Sandaime-sama with an honorific instead of the usual affectionate title. Sasuke exhaled sharply. Wow! You all really messed up. Kakashi let out a small chuckle, though there was no humor in it. Yeah. We did. And it's going to take a long time before she forgives us. But at the very least, on a professional level, she'll still do her duty. For now, all they could do was wait, and hope that one day, Naruko would be able to trust them again. Anbu headquarters. One of the many advantages of being part of the Anbu was access to their state-of-the-art training grounds. Naruko was taking full advantage of this, channeling her emotions into relentless training. She felt a deep sense of hurt and betrayal, and as a result, she unleashed torrents of fire across the area, leaving destruction in her wake. Unbeknownst to her, she had an audience. A group of Anbu operatives observed her from a distance, accompanied by her new friend, Hinto. They had been informed that Naruko would soon learn about her heritage and the presence within her. Judging by her reaction, it was evident that the news had not been well received. The question remained, was she upset with the Yondaime, or was there another reason behind her distress? They would have to wait for further information from the Anbu assigned to protect the Hokage or for Naruko to explain it herself. Naruko was not the type to openly share her emotions, so they assumed it might take some time before she spoke about it. This was the most raw emotion they had ever seen from her: frustration, sadness, and perhaps even a longing for something she had been denied. However, what caught their attention just as much as her emotions was her remarkable control over fire-based jutsu. Her fire release techniques were executed with incredible skill, and when she performed a fire breath attack, the sheer intensity of the flames made the temperature in the air rise significantly. You can come out now, Naruko spoke suddenly, though she appeared to be addressing no one in particular. A moment later, 6 Anbu operatives emerged from their hiding places. You know, maybe you shouldn't destroy the training grounds, Hinto commented, attempting to lighten the mood. Other people use them too, you know. Naruko remained unfazed. It can be repaired. It's just a little fire. Still, something must have really upset you, one of the masked Anbu, codenamed Cow, remarked. Hokage. Their suspicions were confirmed. They had expected her reaction to be intense, but they hadn't anticipated that she would openly admit her frustration. There was no indication that she harbored any thoughts of rebellion or disloyalty, but her anger needed to be addressed. What happened, Naruko? Hinto asked, his voice laced with concern. Though he was still young like Naruko, he had not been informed of her full heritage, only that she was a Jinchuriki. Based on her reaction, however, it was clear that this was about more than just that revelation. They lied to me my entire life. Naruko's voice carried a mixture of pain and resentment. Who decided that I shouldn't be allowed to know who my parents were? Hinto's expression softened as understanding dawned on him. The idea of not knowing one's parents, of being denied that fundamental truth, was heartbreaking. You have to understand, it was for, Cow began, but he never got the chance to finish. In the blink of an eye, Naruko's tanto was at his throat. For my protection? She challenged, her eyes narrowing. That's not true. I could have known, and no one else would have had to. If you all hadn't been notified that I'd received certain information, you would have never guessed that I now know my mother was Kushina Uzumaki and my father was Minato Namikaze, The Yondaime Hokage, the very person who sealed the 9 tails inside me. Hinto's eyes widened in shock. Your father was the Yondaime? You didn't know, Hinto? I figured all Anbu were aware. The younger ones only know about your Jinchuriki status, Kao admitted nervously. And? Could you move your sword away? He was in a precarious position. Naruko was one of the fastest shinobi in the village, and the blade was already at his throat. Even the slightest movement on his part could prove unwise. After a moment, Naruko sighed and withdrew her weapon. Right. Sorry. Listen, I'm not angry at my father. I'm angry that they kept the truth from me. They never truly cared about me. They just wanted a loyal asset. Naruko. Hinto hesitated. He wanted to say something, anything, to make her feel better, but he struggled to find the right words. That's not entirely. Don't, Snake, Naruko interrupted. This is how all Jinchuriki are treated. We're seen as nothing more than tools for the village. Don't try to convince me otherwise. Even the villagers. They only see me as something to be feared. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away. Hinto instinctively reached out, but then hesitated, lowering his hand. The usually cheerful and carefree Hyuga was at a loss. He felt a surge of frustration toward the Hokage for allowing this to happen, but at the same time, he didn't know the full story. Perhaps there was a reason for the secrecy, or perhaps it had been a mistake. One thing was certain, the Hokage had made a choice. Whether it was the right one or not was still unclear. Guys! What are we supposed to do? Hinto finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hawk, I'm not entirely sure, but we have to hope she doesn't let her anger take over. If that happens, the Kyuubi may seize the opportunity, and stopping her would become incredibly difficult, Cal said, and everyone nodded in agreement. It would be a serious problem if Naruko ever lost control of her emotions. Naruko arrived at a public training ground, eager to test her Mangekyo Sharingan. She had briefly seen its effects back in the Hokage's office, but she needed to become more familiar with using it properly. She had been avoiding it due to the discomfort it caused, and now she regretted that decision. She lacked control over her new abilities and didn't fully understand what they were capable of. The only thing she knew for sure was that she had summoned a storm and that lightning had surrounded her. Activating her Mangekyo Sharingan, she felt the usual burning sensation. Though it was less intense than before, it was still uncomfortable. She began training her perception first, performing multiple sunshine techniques in a continuous circuit to adjust to how her vision changed. Gradually, she realized she could move much faster and with greater confidence now that her eyesight had improved. I wish there were a technique that allowed training to be more efficient, one that lets me experience things multiple times over. The clones I create from crows or earth don't transfer experience. We can communicate, but it's not the same, she thought. Perhaps Kakashi knew something about this. The third Hokage definitely would, but she wasn't ready to meet with him just yet. She was still upset with Kakashi, though she considered the possibility that he had only been following orders. She would have to ask him directly, but for now, it was just a thought. After a while, Naruko realized she had no idea how she had activated her previous ability. It had just happened. Focusing more chakra into her eyes, she suddenly felt a powerful energy surge around her. A dark aura formed, and as she pushed even more chakra into it, a skeletal ribcage materialized around her. Holy, she started but stopped herself. Naruko? What is that? She turned to see Shikamaru standing nearby, looking astonished. Shikamaru? What are you doing here? Narasama? Naruko quickly bowed, momentarily forgetting that she was still encased in the strange ribcage. Naruko? Are you all right? That technique. Shikaku observed her carefully. Shikamaru, still in awe, couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing something immensely powerful. Yeah, somehow, I instinctively know its name, Susanoo. I think I'm fine. But my body feels like it's on fire. It's incredibly painful. But I can handle it, Naruko replied through gritted teeth, her fists clenched tightly. Naruko, what exactly can it do? I'm not sure, Shikamaru. Right now, it seems to be purely defensive. There are additional stages? Yes, Shikamaru. The more it develops, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, it can serve as both an offense and an impenetrable defense. This is the Uchiha clan's ultimate protective technique, Susanoo. Shikaku listened carefully. He could sense the admiration from the two younger shinobi, and even he had to admit it was an extraordinary ability. The Mangekyo Sharingan was already rare, but seeing Susanoo in action was even more so. Naruko deactivated the Susanoo, feeling a strong desire to unlock her other ability. Frustration was clear on her face, and Shikaku, as perceptive as ever, took note. Something on your mind, Naruko? Nara-sama. I don't fully understand my visual abilities. I barely use these eyes. Today, I activated one by accident, and I don't even know how I did it. What exactly happened? I think I created a storm. The angrier I got, the stronger it became. There was also lightning coursing through my body. Interesting. What chakra natures do you possess? I know I have fire. That's the element I've trained in all my life. My brother never got around to telling me what my other affinities are. You should find out. From what I can tell, your ability may be heavily tied to lightning chakra. It seems quite powerful, so you likely have a natural affinity for it. However, you need to train in it properly before using it in battle. Fire-style techniques can be dangerous because they feed off the environment, but they can also be countered easily with water. Lightning, on the other hand, is the most unpredictable element. It doesn't have a direct natural counter, only wind-style techniques can neutralize it, and even then, the wind must be infused with chakra. Otherwise, lightning can be incredibly destructive. It can create explosions, generate heat, and even ignite fires. If it interacts with water, it spreads through it. It can cut through the earth, and if you combine it with fire, it becomes even more volatile. Without proper training, you could not only put others in danger, but also harm yourself. Naruko listened intently, absorbing every word. She knew that if she wanted to control this power, she would need to train harder than ever before. Naruko stood still, carefully processing all the information she had just learned. She understood the elements, their interactions, and counters, but she had never looked at them from this perspective before. Up until now, she had only considered their role in combat, never fully realizing how they influenced the world around her. Now, she had to be more mindful of her actions. Perhaps she shouldn't recklessly use fire-style techniques whenever she was frustrated. At the very least, she had the awareness to practice them in secluded areas, ensuring no one else was around, as she often preferred solitude anyway. I understand, Nara-sama, she responded with a newfound sense of understanding. You mentioned that you were upset. Why is that? Shikamaru asked, now that his father's lesson had concluded. Since the discussion involved Naruko, he had been paying close attention. Though he usually listened and took mental notes without showing it, this time, his curiosity was apparent. Well, I learned something important today. Shikamaru, I would understand if you no longer wanted to be friends. Nara-sama, I can only assume you already know what I am about to say. Shikamaru frowned slightly, trying to piece everything together. He glanced at his father, who gave a slight nod, confirming that he was already aware of what Naruko was about to reveal. She's always been a bit different, isolated. There's a side to her that doesn't match her usual self. That strange red chakra when she got angry at Kiba. Her birthday, October 10th, the Kyuubi attack. People calling her demon brat. Could it be? Shikaku observed his son's thoughtful expression and smirked internally. So, he's figuring it out now. Impressive. He truly is sharp, he'll surpass me someday. Until then, I'll keep teaching him shogi and make sure to win while I still can. With an amused chuckle to himself, he turned his attention back to Naruko, who took a deep breath before speaking. I am the Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko. And the daughter of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki, the previous Jinchuriki. Shikamaru's eyes widened in shock. I was able to deduce that you had the Kyubi sealed inside you, but what? Then again, the fourth Hokage was known as an honorable man. It makes sense in a way, he wouldn't ask someone else to make a sacrifice that he himself wasn't willing to make. Perhaps. So, are you angry at the fourth Hokage? Shikaku asked, curious about the source of her frustration. He understood why she might feel that way, but Naruko had always been someone who thought differently from others. No, she responded firmly. Shikaku had suspected as much, but her answer only deepened his curiosity. I'm upset because they lied to me my entire life. They tried to hide the truth about why they were gone in the first place. Shikaku allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to form. He was relieved that she didn't resent her father. As someone who had served as an advisor and friend to Minato, he would have hated to see the man's daughter hold bitterness toward him for something he had no choice in. What do you mean? Shikamaru asked, seeking further clarification. He wanted to fully understand her perspective and see if he would have made the same decision in her place. They always told me they didn't know who my parents were or why people treated me differently. But they knew the truth all along. Then they told me it was to protect me. Yes, my father had enemies, but knowing the truth wouldn't have changed that. You would have been able to prepare, Shikamaru interjected, his analytical mind working quickly. You could have trained to protect yourself, maybe even been more motivated, knowing the sacrifices your parents made and that they actually loved you. You're right. That was unfair. Shikaku observed his son with quiet admiration. His ability to think critically had always impressed him, but seeing him apply it to real situations like this reaffirmed his potential. Back when Naruko was just a baby, Shikaku had shared similar thoughts, but the Hokage had made his decision, and no one had been able to change it, until now. Naruko nodded in agreement. And if I had known that I carried the Kyubi inside me, maybe I wouldn't have spent so much time questioning why people resented me. I could have focused on proving that I wasn't what they thought I was. Maybe I could have learned how to control it earlier instead of feeling confused about my own emotions and instincts. Maybe I wouldn't have pushed everyone away. Maybe I could have been a better friend to you. Shikamaru placed a hand on her shoulder and looked her in the eye. Naruko, you've always been a great friend. You're loyal and kind, even if you don't always express it outright. Your actions speak louder than words, especially when it comes to Sasuke. She told me how you've always looked out for her, ever since you first met. And honestly, since we've known each other, you've pushed me to improve. As much of a challenge as that can be. He gave a small smirk before continuing. But no matter what, even if you don't say it, we all know you've got our backs. That's rare. Most people only look out for themselves, and in your position, many would seek revenge or hold grudges. But you? You stay true to your beliefs and loyal to the village, even after everything you've been through. So never doubt your worth as a friend. Naruko wasn't sure how to respond. She was just relieved that Shikamaru didn't resent her. And, if she was being honest with herself, he had a point. No matter what had happened, she had always remained devoted to those she cared about. Even though Hiruzen had kept the truth from her, she still couldn't bring herself to turn against him. Shikaku watched the exchange with quiet approval. This was the most effort Shikamaru had ever put into something like this. It was clear that Naruko had been a positive influence on him. They both relied on each other more than they probably realized. After that, the conversation stalled, leading to an awkward silence. No one quite knew what to say next. So, learn anything new? Naruko asked suddenly. Man, school's been way more of a hassle without you two. Especially after you completely outmatched Kiba. Yeah. Well, he said something about Sasuke-chan, and I didn't like it. Yeah. Oh, and my dad wants to teach me some game called shogi. Apparently, it's all about strategy. Sounds like a pain. Oh wow, we'll have to play when you learn. You know how to play? Shikaku asked curiously. Sort of. Nisan tried teaching me. I know the basic rules, but I never got too deep into it. He wasn't the type to take things too seriously. Naruko chuckled at the memory. Shisui had always been a light-hearted person, cracking jokes even in tough situations. But when it mattered, he was incredibly skilled, a shinobi recognized as one of the strongest Uchiha for a reason. Looks like I'll have two people to challenge on the board, Shikaku mused with a smirk before glancing at his son. We should head back. Your mother will have dinner ready soon, and you know how she feels about us being late. Shikamaru visibly shivered at the thought. Troublesome. Yeah, I should head home too. She's probably worried since Oji-san likely came by. Naruko waved them off before heading toward her home. 2 hours later. Naruko took her time walking home, knowing she'd likely be met with a lecture. By now, she had calmed down, but something still felt off. She noticed that her vision would occasionally blur for a moment before refocusing. Maybe it was just exhaustion or her body adjusting. I need to train with these eyes more. And I should start learning lightning style too. She finally reached her house but hesitated at the door. For some reason, she had a strange feeling, like maybe she'd be avoided. That wasn't like her at all. She had never been the type to turn away from anything. If anything, she would scold herself for even thinking that way. Shaking off the thought, she smiled slightly and stepped up onto the porch. Just as she reached for the door, it swung open, and Sasuke immediately pulled her into a hug. How'd you know? Naruko asked, surprised. Naru-chan, I always know when you're nearby. You took your time getting home. Are you okay? Let's talk inside. Naruko led her in and immediately noticed Kakashi waiting there. For a split second, a flicker of anger flashed in her eyes, but she quickly forced herself to relax. Taking a slow breath, she shut her eyes for a moment before reopening them with a neutral expression. She wanted answers before making any judgments. Why did you do it? Sandaime-sama established the law, an S-rank secret with severe consequences for its disclosure. Shisui and I never agreed with it, but we had orders to follow. Naruko absorbed the information, processing her thoughts carefully. She could sense that Kakashi was sincere. As she glanced down at Sasuke, she noticed the curiosity in her eyes, though she remained silent. Naruko held her closer and sighed. I don't believe you're lying. Or perhaps you're just exceptionally good at deception. Both are possible. However, I will choose to trust you for now. I do have a request, though. What is it? Kakashi asked. Could you analyze my chakra natures? Sure. Kakashi retrieved a chakra paper and explained how it functioned. Naruko followed the instructions and observed the results with surprise. The paper split in half, one side burned to ashes, while the other crinkled into a tight ball. Shisui was right, Kakashi murmured. What do you mean? Naruko asked, intrigued. If Shisui had known something, why hadn't he shared it? He suspected you would have 3 chakra natures. You have an exceptionally strong affinity for fire and lightning. With a notable aptitude for wind as well. Wow! Could you explain their origins? Of course, Naruko. Your fire affinity is a hallmark of the Uchiha lineage that runs through your veins. Your proficiency in lightning stems from your father, Kakashi said with a warm smile, pleased that he could pass on his teachings. Your wind nature, though slightly weaker than the other two, comes from your mother. Naruko smiled and nodded, comforted by the realization that she had inherited strengths from both her parents. The thought that mastering the Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities might be within reach filled her with determination. Can you teach me how to use lightning? I'd be happy to. Also, could you check Sasuke-chan's chakra nature so she can train too? Sasuke smiled at Naruko's consideration. Even when everything revolved around her, she always thought of others. Of course. Sasuke, follow the same steps and channel your chakra into the paper. She did as instructed, watching as the paper crinkled and partially burned. She shares your affinity for lightning, along with fire. Thank you, Oji-san. May I take the rest of the evening to spend time with Sasuke-chan? Kakashi suppressed a chuckle, nodding before giving Naruko a reassuring pat on the shoulder. With a small wave, he departed, leaving the two standing in the doorway. As soon as the door closed, Naruko dropped to her knees, her breath hitching as tears welled up. She had thought she was fine, that she had come to terms with everything. But now, left in the quiet, the emotions overwhelmed her. Sasuke knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around Naruko in a comforting embrace. She didn't speak, she simply held her, offering silent support. No matter how much Naruko tried to contain it, the tears wouldn't stop. She couldn't understand why. Moments ago, she felt fine. Now, she was overcome with emotions she thought she had already processed. She clung to Sasuke, and the two remained there, leaning against the wall. At some point, exhaustion took over, and they both drifted into sleep. When Naruko woke up, she realized they were still in the living room, curled up on the floor. She looked at Sasuke and smiled, feeling a sense of relief. Releasing her emotions had helped. Gently, she carried Sasuke to her bed and laid her down. Sasuke stirred awake, blinking up at her. I learned who my parents were. And why I've been treated differently all my life. Naru. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the previous Kyuubi Jinchuriki. My father was Minato Uchiha, the Yondaime Hokage. Oh wow. That means you're... Yes. I am the Jinchuriki. It's also the reason behind my chakra surges? Naruko hesitated, looking down, slightly concerned about how Sasuke would react. But when she felt Sasuke gently press a reassuring kiss against her forehead, she knew that everything would be alright. 1 month later. Naruko had been training diligently in lightning-style techniques and had finally mastered their effective use. Now, she was preparing for her first mission outside the village with her Anbu squad. Until now, her duties had primarily consisted of patrols, security assignments, and intense training. She had been honing her Mangekyo Sharingan and discovered that she could control storms, even harnessing the power of thunder. However, she noticed something peculiar, her vision seemed slightly less sharp than before. Fox, are you paying attention? Yes, Captain. I understand our orders. Fox, take it easy, alright? Just stay relaxed. This is your first mission, and we understand if you're feeling a bit anxious. Thanks, Cat, but I believe I'm fine. Of course you're fine. You're definitely stronger than all of us. Keep it down, Hawk. Always the serious one, aren't you, Tiger? They exchanged smiles as they set off toward Iwagakure. Their objective was reconnaissance, gathering as much intelligence as possible. The increasing movements from Iwa were concerning, and it was becoming clear that conflict was inevitable. It was no longer a question of if, but when. Kumagakure remained largely isolated, with no intelligence reports coming from within its borders. While this could be seen as a positive sign, there was growing concern that they might form an alliance with Iwagakure to challenge Konohagakure. If such a coalition emerged, it would pose a significant threat. Both villages had a much larger shinobi force than Konoha, and if they combined their strength, the outcome could be disastrous. Although Sunagakure was an ally, they were still recovering from the Third Shinobi War. Their forces remained weakened, making them hesitant to take an active role in another conflict. While they would provide strategic support, they were unlikely to contribute troops at the onset of hostilities. Kirigakure, meanwhile, was embroiled in civil war and was not expected to engage in any external conflicts in the near future. Hiruzen Sarutobi was deeply troubled. If war broke out, it would be the third one he had endured. Konoha had always managed to emerge victorious, but victory came at a cost. Over time, their forces had gradually diminished, and the village no longer had the strength it once did. The Senju clan was gone, and only 2 Uchiha remained. Among the 5 great villages, Konoha's numbers were among the lowest, second only to Kirigakure due to their ongoing internal strife. Would there ever be lasting peace, or was conflict an unavoidable reality? Regardless, Konoha was determined not to be the aggressor. Instead, they would focus on gathering intelligence and monitoring enemy movements. With that in mind, Hiruzen considered recalling Jiraiya and Tsunade to the village, ensuring that all their strongest assets were prepared. Meanwhile, Naruko and her squad had crossed into Iwagakure's territory. They were now operating in enemy land, where discovery meant complete disavowal. If they were captured, Konoha would neither acknowledge their mission nor provide any form of assistance. Such was the nature of Anbu, ghosts who moved unseen, existing only in the shadows. Tiger, the squad captain, signaled for the team to spread out at 30-meter intervals to better assess their surroundings. They were to rendezvous at a designated valley within 10 minutes. Naruko set off to conduct reconnaissance. Summoning a group of crows, she locked eyes with them as her 3 Tomoe Sharingan activated. Through their vision, she surveyed the landscape, noting terrain features and potential sources of food. A dirt roadway caught her attention. It likely led to Iwagakure or one of the smaller settlements in the Land of Earth. Further ahead, one of her crows spotted an Iwa patrol 10 miles away. There were 15 shinobi in the group, an unusually large number for a border patrol. Standard formations typically consisted of 3-man squads, with 5 at most in areas of heightened security. The presence of such a large unit suggested something unusual was happening. Naruko quickly made her way to the rendezvous point and waited for her squad. A sense of unease settled over her. Something about that patrol felt off. When the rest of the team arrived, their first objective had been completed. They had mapped out the terrain, identified potential base locations, and determined viable sites for operational camps. However, if their suspicions were correct, a larger threat loomed ahead. "Captain, something isn't right," Naruko reported. "I spotted a patrol of 15 shinobi 10 miles northwest of here. That's far too many for a routine border patrol. I recommend we either withdraw or relocate immediately." "Fox, we have our orders. We will remain," Tiger responded firmly. "But, Captain." "That's enough, Fox. Follow the mission parameters." "Understood." Naruko clenched her fists. She understood the chain of command, but her instincts told her something was seriously wrong. Unfortunately, there was no concrete evidence to act on, at least, not yet. The squad pressed forward, continuing their search for intelligence. They eventually encountered a traveling merchant and discreetly used transformation techniques to blend in as ordinary travelers. Hoping to gain insights, they engaged the merchant in conversation. The merchant explained that he rarely traveled to Iwagakure itself but frequently moved between smaller villages. He noted that the local shinobi seemed more tense than usual, on edge yet strangely eager, as if anticipating something significant. This combination of heightened vigilance and excitement suggested that something was indeed in motion. If the enemy was preparing for war, it likely meant new alliances were forming, or major plans were underway. As the merchant departed, Tiger turned to the squad. "At least we've gathered some information. With this, we can." He suddenly winced in pain as an arrow struck his shoulder, piercing through to the front. "Captain!" Naruko immediately caught him as the squad quickly relocated using the body flicker technique, retreating to a safer position. Something was definitely wrong. And they were about to find out just how much. Kat carefully broke the back end of the arrow and gently pulled it through the wound. She immediately began administering basic first aid, cauterizing the wound before carefully bandaging it. "How many do you think there are?" Bor asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm not sure, but I counted at least 15. There could be more that arrived from another direction." "At the very least, we're outnumbered 3 to 1, Kat responded. "Fox, can you get a visual on them?" "Possibly. But if they're using their earth camouflage techniques, the crows won't be able to spot them. They may have the Sharingan, but it only allows me to see what they see, it doesn't detect chakra like my own eyes can." "Hawk, what's the range on your Byakugan?" "Approximately 4 miles. "Alright, at least that gives us a small perimeter to work with. How's the captain?" Unconscious, possibly poisoned, Kat replied, her voice tense. The situation had just become even more challenging. They were up against an unknown enemy, both in skill and numbers. At minimum, they were facing 15 adversaries, possibly more. A 4 against 15 fight was already difficult, but protecting Tiger from being captured meant one of them had to stay back, effectively making it 3 against 15, or worse. With every passing moment, the odds seemed to stack against them. They're getting closer. 4 miles out, we have about 5 minutes before 30 Iwa Shinobi arrive, Hawk reported, frowning. The team exchanged glances, all thinking the same thing. 3 against 30. And that wasn't counting potential reinforcements. This was going to be a difficult battle. Naruko possessed incredible power and potential, but she still lacked extensive combat experience. The others were skilled, but the sheer numbers made this fight nearly impossible. Each of them would have to face 10 opponents, and even the smallest mistake could cost them dearly. All right, here's the plan, Naruko began, her voice steady with determination. Kat, you're the most skilled in medical ninjutsu. You'll take Tiger to safety and stay by his side. Hawk and I will engage the enemy directly to eliminate as many as possible, while Boar provides long-range support. Once we weaken their front line, Boar will join the fight up close. Naruko glanced around as the others listened intently. They were following her plan without question, not because she gave them room for debate, but because she had taken command of the situation. If we begin to be overwhelmed, Boar and Hawk will retreat to Kat's location. The 4 of you will return to the village and report the intelligence we've gathered. She handed a scroll to Kat, and the team exchanged uneasy looks. Fox, you can't be serious. You're too young, one of us should. Sorry, Kat, but that's not an option. I'm the only one who can buy enough time for the rest of you to escape. You all have more experience, and that's far more valuable in the long run. You need to get this information back to the village. Fox, you're a Jinchuriki, one of the last of the Uchiha. Which makes me the best choice for this role, Hawk. If we're overrun, I'll activate my Susanoo to hold them back. I can only sustain it for a few minutes before the strain becomes too much, so you'll have to leave immediately when that happens. Are you really willing to take that risk? Kat asked, her concern evident. It's not about wanting to, Kat. It's about necessity. We've gathered enough information to confirm that an alliance is either forming or already in place. That's critical intelligence for the village, and it has to get back safely. Boar studied her expression carefully. If you do survive, what's your plan? If I'm too weak to use the body flicker technique to escape, I've marked a ravine 30 miles northeast as my fallback point. I'll rest there before continuing the mission. If that happens, I'll send a message once I'm able. You're planning to move deeper into enemy territory while injured and exhausted? Kat asked, disbelief in her voice. Yes. That's my responsibility. This mission took a turn for the worse the moment we stayed in position too long. Now, we have to adapt and ensure at least some of us make it back with the intel. Hawk exhaled sharply. Fox. You realize that, according to your plan, we will be overrun. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of when. I know, Hawk, Naruko said calmly. Based on our numbers, it will happen within 2.5 minutes. Just use your gentle fist to take down as many as possible until then, all right? The team exchanged resolute nods, steeling themselves for the battle ahead. Training Ground 7. So, how do you think Naru is doing on her first mission outside the village? Kakashi paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. He understood that her mission was in unfamiliar territory, carrying considerable risks. He hoped Naruko was managing well. She had reassured Sasuke that she was only traveling to the border villages, omitting the fact that these were not friendly areas. Kakashi knew that Naruko didn't want Sasuke to worry, so she had chosen to keep certain details to herself. I'm sure she's doing well. With her Sharingan and exceptional speed, she can travel quickly and remain highly aware of her surroundings at the border, Kakashi replied, his voice calm yet reassuring. Yeah. You're right. She'll be back in a week and promised to bring back a souvenir. Sasuke smiled at the thought of Naruko exploring different villages where no one knew her past, places where she wouldn't be judged unfairly. Maybe she would even get the chance to meet new people and enjoy their company. Kakashi, however, couldn't bring himself to reveal the full extent of the dangers Naruko was likely facing. He could only hope for the best. Seeing Sasuke's hopeful expression, he allowed himself a small smile, knowing that she sincerely wished for Naruko's happiness. If only things were that simple. Well, your lightning technique is progressing really well. Want to know a secret? Kakashi asked, shifting the conversation. What is it? I'm planning to teach Naruko one of my most prized techniques. It's something I developed myself. And actually, I'd like to teach it to you as well. But let's keep it a surprise for now, alright? Sasuke's eyes lit up with excitement, and she eagerly nodded. She knew Naruko would be thrilled to learn a new technique, especially one created by Kakashi. If it was something that personal to him, then it was truly special. She was also surprised that Kakashi had chosen to teach her too, but she had no complaints. Sensei? I understand why you'd want to teach Naru, but why me? She asked, curiosity evident in her voice. Because you are my apprentice. And more importantly, you are the person who has always stood by her side. That alone is reason enough for me to pass this knowledge on to you. Sasuke felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She blushed slightly at the thought of being so important to Naruko but maintained her composure. Did you know that my technique was actually inspired by one of the jutsu created by Naruko's father? Kakashi added. What? No way. How did that happen? Sasuke asked, surprised. Well, the original technique wasn't fully completed because the creator intended to incorporate nature transformation into it. I attempted to fuse my lightning chakra with it, but it didn't work for me. However, in the process, I developed my own original jutsu. That's amazing. So, will you teach Naru her father's technique as well? Kakashi hesitated for a moment before glancing downward. He wished he could, but that responsibility had already been given to Jiraiya. It frustrated him that Jiraiya had been absent all this time, never making an effort to visit Naruko, not even sending a letter. Pushing those thoughts aside, he turned his focus back to Sasuke. No. Someone else will be the one to teach her that. Why? Because her godfather has chosen to take on that responsibility. Naruko has a godfather? Where has he been all this time? Sasuke's surprise quickly turned to frustration. If this person had been entrusted with Naruko's care, why had he been absent for so long? It's complicated. And honestly, I don't agree with his decisions either. But this is how things have been set up. That said, I will do everything I can to teach her my technique and assist in any way possible when Lord Hiruzen allows her to learn the jutsu that is rightfully hers. And what technique is that? Her father's most renowned jutsu. Sasuke's eyes widened as the realization sank in. If Naruko could master that technique, she would become an incredibly formidable shinobi in one-on-one combat. Earth Country, 50 miles from the border. A light rain had begun to fall, and the terrain was quickly turning to mud. The team exchanged glances one last time, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. What was about to unfold was necessary, it was the only way to escape while safeguarding critical intelligence. Attempting to flee together would be futile, the Iwa shinobi were far too familiar with the land and could navigate it with ease. A diversion was their only hope. Naruko was the only one capable of creating enough time for them to escape, thanks to her Mangekyo. If she hadn't awakened it, their chances would be slim. She could still buy them time, but not enough. Her lack of experience meant a mistake was inevitable, and the consequences could be dire. The plan was set, 3 of them would hold off the enemy long enough for Yugao and Tenzo, who remained unconscious, to gain a head start toward the border. After that, Naruko would ensure the remaining 2 could retreat safely. She would have exactly 2.5 minutes to endure before her Susanoo reached its limit. By then, she would either summon the strength to overcome any remaining opponents or be left defenseless. 2.5 minutes, an eternity in battle. No one else among them could offer such a window of opportunity. For those fleeting moments, Naruko would be untouchable. And even after that, she would continue to fight, providing them with every possible advantage. Alright, Cat, it's time. Fox. Let her know for me, alright? Yugao embraced Naruko, knowing this could be their last farewell, before disappearing with Tenzo in a blur of movement. Now, only 3 remained. Who would have thought this mission would turn out like this? Haha, yeah. What a way to start our first mission outside the village, huh, Hawk? You're surprisingly calm, Fox. I never expected an 11-year-old to be this composed in a situation like this. Yeah, poor. I didn't expect it either. But my life isn't the only one at stake. I guess now I understand why my parents, and everyone else who made the ultimate sacrifice, did what they did. And why is that? Hinto looked at Naruko, concern in his eyes. His closest friend was about to walk the fine line between survival and defeat. Naruko met their gazes. There is no greater love than to give one's life for a friend. The two placed a hand on her shoulder. Until now, they hadn't fully realized how much she cared for them. She had never needed to say it aloud. She was a person of action, and in her eyes, there was no stronger way to express love than through sacrifice. Deep within, the QB stirred, opening its eyes. For so long, it had viewed humans as selfish and power-hungry. Yet this girl, despite everything, despite its attempts to manipulate her emotions, had remained steadfast in her principles, never allowing darkness to consume her. Perhaps, just perhaps, this child was different. I'm grateful to have known you, even if only for a short time, Hinto said, trying to remain strong. You're an enigma, Fox, but I'm honored to have fought alongside you. Your father would be proud of the shinobi you've become. Thank you, both of you. I only wish we had more time. They took a final moment to prepare. Weapon pouches were checked, supplies accounted for, everything had to be in place. Remember, once the first wave arrives, you two retreat. Hawk estimated 6 would come first, they're likely assessing our strength and numbers. Once they fall or send a signal, you move. Am I the only one who just realized that an 11-year-old is calling the shots? Naruko and Boar chuckled. You'd make a fine captain, Fox. You assessed the situation faster than any of us and made a decisive plan without hesitation. You put others before yourself and demonstrated true leadership in such a short time. Thanks, Boar. Hawk, how long until they reach us? 90 seconds and more have joined them in the distance. How many? Boar asked sharply. 100 in total. Silence fell over them. The weight of that number was staggering. 100 enemy shinobi? This was far beyond what they had anticipated. This mission was compromised from the beginning, Naruko murmured. Boar, take note, this information stays between our squad, the commander, and Hokage-sama. Someone leaked details about our operation. There's either a traitor among us, or a spy. Boar stiffened. Fox, there has to be another way. It's too late for that, Boar. There's no turning back. This changes everything. No wonder the enemy patrol was unusually large. Listen, if it's a spy, the med wing is a likely target, intelligence slips easily there. Lock down that information and don't share it with anyone outside our trusted circle. Now go. What? Fox, we were supposed to fight together. Sorry, Hawk, everything has changed. Given the circumstances, you need to leave immediately. If they attempt to block the border, Cat may require assistance. I'll buy you time so they don't catch you from behind, just go. Once you enter the land of fire, they won't pursue. That would be an act of war, and neither side is prepared for that just yet. A patrol should arrive in about 20 minutes, try to rendezvous with them. If not, keep running and don't stop until you reach Konoha. Understood? Hi. They responded in unison. With one last look, Naruko nodded at them before they vanished in a blur, hurrying to assist Kat, leaving their friend behind. 10 miles from the border. Kat, is everything all right? Yes. But what are you two doing here so soon, Hawk? Fox changed the plan. What do you mean, Boar? More enemy shinobi arrived, 100 in total, Hawk said quietly, his gaze lowered. He couldn't meet her eyes, knowing how much this situation weighed on her. Then, Fox also discovered that our mission was compromised. There's a traitor among us. That's why we arrived early. Our escape route may no longer be safe, so Fox sent us to reinforce you, Boar explained, his expression serious. What about Fox's backup? Fox gave us a direct order. So what, Hawk? She's not the captain. No, but when Tiger went down, no one else stepped up. She made the call without hesitation, even knowing the odds. Facing 100 opponents alone isn't a decision made lightly. She knew every second mattered. That's leadership. I don't care, Boar, she's an Anbu fulfilling her duty, Boar interrupted firmly. Ensuring that we return to Konoha with this intel is the priority. We now have confirmation of a potential alliance, a traitor in our midst, and key enemy locations. If we stay, we risk losing all of that. She had to make this choice. Kat fell silent, nodding reluctantly. Without another word, the group continued toward Konoha. The journey was mostly quiet, the tension thick between them. Though the final 10 miles were uneventful, Hawk and Boar couldn't shake the feeling that they should have stayed longer, but there was no way to know if it would have remained clear. What's the plan once we cross? Kat asked, glancing at the others. Boar, the strongest of the three, carried the injured Tiger over his shoulder, switching with Hawk when needed to conserve their energy. Fox mentioned two options: rendezvous with a patrol west of here, which should arrive in about 5 minutes, or head straight to the village, Hawk responded as they moved swiftly through the trees. After a brief moment of thought, Kat made the call. We go straight to the village. Tiger needs medical attention, and the intel must reach Hokage-sama immediately. The others nodded in agreement and adjusted their route accordingly. Do you think she'll make it? Hawk asked, his voice tinged with concern. He tried to stay composed, knowing this was part of the job, but the thought of losing a comrade, especially a friend, weighed heavily on him. I hope so. She's strong, there's no doubt about that. But if she does survive, she won't return right away. She'll continue the mission. And when she does come back, I believe she's captain material, Boar said with conviction. You sound so sure she'll win, Kat remarked. Fox is one of the toughest out there. If anyone can do it, it's her. She may lack experience, but her speed and visual prowess will allow her to adapt. They all nodded in agreement. Whatever happened next was beyond their control. Once they crossed the border, their mission was officially over. Even if Naruko survived, they wouldn't be permitted to go back and assist her. She would have to complete the mission alone, remaining in enemy territory even longer than planned. What was supposed to be a simple week-long reconnaissance mission had just become far more dangerous. If she survived, she would need time to recover, extending her mission by several more days. But the most troubling question remained: who was the traitor? If they had known about this operation, what else had they compromised? 1 hour later, Hokage's office. Sandaime-sama. What's the matter? Why are the three of you here? Sandaime-sama, please activate security and soundproofing seals. Hiruzen gave a nod to Kat and gestured for the other Anbu to leave. Once the room was secured, he turned his attention back to the team. What happened? Sandaime-sama, we were stationed in Earth Country, gathering intelligence. During our mission, Naruko sensed something unusual after spotting a patrol, but Tenzo dismissed the concern, insisting we continue. Unfortunately, we were ambushed. Tenzo was poisoned, and we had no choice but to retreat to a crater about 50 miles from the border. In that moment, Naruko quickly devised a strategy to ensure the success of our mission. She insisted that I leave ahead of the group, carrying Tenzo to safety while she handled the situation. After she left, we made our preparations. Hinto activated her Byakugan and quickly assessed the situation. Our opponents had increased in number. What had initially been 30 adversaries had now grown to 100. Naruko immediately recognized that this was an ambush, meaning there was likely a traitor among us or within the Elder Council. She made a swift decision, instructing Hinto and me to escort Yugao and the captain to safety while ensuring we returned with critical intelligence. Naruko was determined to buy us as much time as possible. She warned us that if she survived, she would be too weakened to retreat easily. Instead, she marked a location on a map, a ravine about 30 miles northeast of our position, where she would send a message and continue the mission alone. Those were her orders. Bor finished delivering the debriefing. Who put her in charge? Hiruzen asked, his concern evident. Naruko was facing overwhelming odds alone. Despite her strength, she had always carried burdens alone. And the last interaction between them had left an emotional wound. Hiruzen regretted his actions and feared losing her. The three of us exchanged glances before Hinto spoke up. Well? She did, Sandaime-sama. What? We all hesitated when the captain fell. But Naruko didn't. She acted immediately, making precise decisions without hesitation. She formulated a plan that ensured our safety and secured the necessary intelligence, Hinto explained. We never wanted things to unfold this way, Bor added. But Naruko understood the reality of the situation. She was the only one capable of holding off the enemy long enough for us to escape, thanks to her Sharingan and Susanoo. Hiruzen felt a sense of pride. Naruko had demonstrated exceptional leadership under pressure, prioritizing the mission and the well-being of her comrades over her own safety. Hokage-sama, if I may, Bor continued, I believe Naruko has the qualities of a captain. While she may lack experience, she proved she has what it takes. If she makes it back, I strongly recommend that you and Commander Wolf consider her for a leadership role. I will take it under consideration, came a voice from the shadows. Commander Wolf had appeared silently, having listened to the entire discussion. He now felt reassured that his faith in Naruko had not been misplaced. She was a true operative, decisive and unwavering in her resolve. Commander Wolf. Hinto acknowledged him respectfully. You all performed well? Rest up and wait for Naruko's message, Wolf instructed. How can you be sure she'll send one? Yugao asked hopefully. Wolf gave a small smile. Just a feeling. Dash. Training Ground 7. Sasuke panted heavily, catching her breath after an intense training session. Her exhaustion was evident, but her progress was undeniable. Kakashi observed her with approval. She was advancing quickly. If not for Naruko, Sasuke would undoubtedly be the top kunoichi of her age group. She was naturally gifted, learning at an impressive rate. However, her endurance remained her biggest challenge. Kakashi had been focusing on building her stamina, as she already possessed strong chakra reserves for her age. She just needed the physical endurance to match. You're doing well, Kakashi praised. Keep at it, and I'm sure your Sharingan will awaken in due time. Hi, Sensei, Sasuke replied between breaths as she reached for a water bottle. After taking a sip, she hesitated before asking, do you know why I haven't awakened it yet? Kakashi considered the question. There could be a few reasons. It varies for each person. Some unlock it through intense training, while for others, it manifests in moments of strong emotion. Then why haven't I awakened mine? She asked, frustration creeping into her voice. Sometimes, it only surfaces in life or death situations, Kakashi explained. That's how Naruko's awakened when she was just 4. On her birthday, intruders broke into her home and attacked her. Shisui arrived in time to protect her, but the intense experience triggered the awakening of her Sharingan. Oh. I see, Sasuke said thoughtfully. She lowered her gaze thoughtfully. She longed for the eyes, not out of resentment but admiration, so she could truly embody the legacy of the Uchiha and stand on equal ground with Naruko. While she didn't harbor bitterness over Naruko possessing them while she did not, she couldn't deny the feeling of longing. The eyes were the pride of the clan, symbols of immense strength, and she aspired to awaken their power. Just wait. Once your abilities manifest, you'll stand unrivaled among your peers. She nodded in quiet determination and settled beneath a tree. The sun had set, and as she lifted her eyes to the moon, a small smile graced her lips. She found comfort in the thought that Naruko, wherever she was, could see the very same moon. Let's get you home, Sasuke. Hi. Land of Earth, a few hours earlier. Naruko stood at the edge of the crater, gazing at the empty space where her last two squad mates had just departed. The confidence she had displayed for their sake faded as her shoulders slumped. A solemn expression crossed her face as she clutched the necklace resting against her chest. I'm sorry, Sasuke-chan. Please forgive me. A familiar voice resonated in her mind. Foolish child. What is it? She responded inwardly. Why did you choose this path, knowing the risks? Because I care. I care about my village, my comrades. And Sasuke-chan. And so, you throw everything away? No. My hope is to leave behind something better than what I inherited. Such naivete. Perhaps. Or perhaps not. Listen, Kyuubi. This world is locked in a cycle of conflict. If there's even a chance to find peace, to create a future where those I cherish are safe and happy, then I have to try. I want to build a world where people understand one another. There was a pause before the voice responded. You are an intriguing human. Try not to fail. Perhaps we shall talk again. Understood. Naruko opened her eyes, adjusting the grip on her tanto as the blade rested lightly on her shoulder. Her gaze sharpened, and the crimson glow of the Sharingan reflected in her irises. Before her stood 6 Iwa shinobi. I apologize, but I can't allow you to report back. Nor can I let you learn our true numbers. She feigned confidence, hoping to mislead them into believing she wasn't alone. If they realized she was outnumbered, they would strike without hesitation. Her eyes glowed as she whispered, Bringer of darkness. In an instant, their vision was stolen. Shadows engulfed their world, trapping them in a void of silence. Panic set in as they fumbled blindly, then, one by one, they collapsed. Each struck down by a kunai expertly placed. Naruko exhaled slowly, steadying herself. She had deliberately used kunai instead of her sword to conserve stamina. That technique consumed more chakra than expected. Then again, it's designed for individual targets, not groups. Though her reserves were vast, she couldn't afford to be reckless. There were many more adversaries ahead. 94 remaining. A few moments passed before 12 more shinobi arrived. They had been waiting for a signal, but when none came, they found only still bodies. And a single figure standing among them. A child. Was this your doing, kid? One of them demanded. Naruko merely tilted her head. Perhaps. Perhaps not. She inhaled deeply before whispering, Dragon Flame Bomb. 3 blazing dragons surged from her mouth, weaving through the air in perfect arcs. One veered left, another right, and the third ascended before descending upon the center. The flames carved through their ranks, striking those at the outermost edges before converging. 7 shinobi were caught in the inferno, leaving 5 standing. Without hesitation, she charged forward. The remaining enemies braced themselves, but before they could react, Naruko vanished from sight. A heartbeat later, she reappeared behind one, swiftly driving her blade through their back. As they fell, she moved again, slicing cleanly across the throats of 2 more. The last 2 warriors eyed her warily, unsettled by her speed. She's too fast, one murmured, tightening their grip on a kunai before launching it at her. The projectile struck its mark. Naruko's body fell lifelessly to the ground, only to dissolve into a swarm of crows. What? The startled exclamation was cut short as the woman found herself struck down. The last remaining shinobi gasped in horror before feeling the cold steel pierce through his ribs, ending the battle. Naruko exhaled, taking a moment to steady herself. The brief bursts of high-speed movement, combined with the fire technique, had drained her more than anticipated. She was still coming to terms with what she was doing. Was it truly this effortless to end a battle? At least they're coming in waves. If they all attacked at once, it would be much more difficult. 20 more approached, each preparing a technique. False surroundings. The world around them shifted, and Naruko vanished from their sight. Recognizing the illusion, they immediately gathered their chakra to dispel it. It took significant effort. Naruko's genjutsu was strong, but once they broke free, it was too late. She was already mid-air, spinning gracefully. 10 kunai left her hands in perfect precision, each finding its mark in the foreheads of those who had taken longer to escape the illusion. The remaining enemies reacted quickly, slamming their hands to the ground. The earth trembled as jagged spikes surged toward Naruko, while towering walls rose on either side, closing in to crush her. Impressive. Conventional dodging isn't an option here. She allowed the attacks to approach, waiting until the last possible moment. Just as her foes believed victory was theirs, a dark aura enveloped her. A skeletal ribcage materialized around her, effortlessly shattering the encroaching stone. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Before they could retreat, a massive arm formed from the construct and swung downward. In a single motion, the battlefield fell silent. Naruko deactivated the ethereal guardian but kept her Mangekyo Sharingan active. She had a feeling she would need it again soon. She let out a small, wry chuckle. It evolved. Still. It's painful. But progress is progress. There are still 62 left. And my body aches from that last attack. I hadn't expected to use Susanoo so soon. Even if it was only for a few moments, the strain is still the same. You know. Maybe I'll lend you some of my strength at the end. This battle has been exhilarating, and I don't intend to lose here. Wouldn't you recover anyway? Yes, but it would take 10 years, and I'd be significantly weaker. The humans would have an easier time sealing me again. Besides, you're remarkable, by far the strongest host I've ever been bound to. HN. Very well. Will you share your name? No. All right then. Let's go, QB. Naruko opened her eyes, scanning the battlefield. The remaining 62 shinobi stood in a semicircle around her, no longer attacking in waves but converging all at once. Oh, she murmured, gripping the necklace around her neck. There was no room for hesitation. I will return home. She cast her gaze toward the moon, watching it through the veil of rain, then turned back to face her opponents. Her Mangekyo Sharingan gleamed, and she muttered, Kaminari. Instantly, the rain intensified, the sky darkened, and a fierce storm erupted. A smirk played on her lips, she could finally control it. The power of lightning surged within her, tenfold stronger than before. Sparks crackled around her as she raised her hands, channeling the storm's fury. The clouds rumbled, and with a single motion, bolts of lightning descended upon the shinobi. The battlefield was engulfed in flashes of electric energy, sending shockwaves through the air. The shinobi struggled against the onslaught, some thrown aside by the sheer force, others momentarily stunned by the overwhelming power. So, I can command the storm itself, Naruko whispered, marveling at the immense energy flowing through her. But her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, searing pain in her eyes. She instinctively clutched her face, stumbling as her vision blurred. The storm wavered, and the lightning ceased its assault. Most of the enemy forces were wounded, but 29 remained in fighting condition. Seeing an opportunity, they launched a coordinated attack. One shinobi struck Naruko in the chest, sending her crashing into a tree. She coughed, catching her breath, but before she could recover, another enemy closed in. Her vision was still hazy, too slow to react. A sharp pain shot through her shoulder as a sword pierced it. Naruko gritted her teeth, staring into the attacker's eyes. Demonic illusion, mirage of inferno. In an instant, the shinobi was trapped within the illusion. The air around her shifted, heat waves distorted the space as the temperature soared. The very ground seemed to burn beneath her feet. Yet, as she inhaled, her breath turned to frost, each gasp cutting into her lungs like shards of ice. How? Can it be so hot and cold at the same time? The shinobi gasped, struggling to move. This technique was something my cousin once worked on, Naruko said evenly. You won't be escaping from it. The illusion intensified. The scorching heat singed the shinobi's skin, while the frigid air froze every breath she took. Her body trembled as pain overtook her senses. Then, she heard a deep rumbling above. Looking up, her eyes widened in horror as a massive meteor loomed over her. She dropped to her knees, paralyzed in fear. The overwhelming pressure bore down upon her, then everything went dark. Back in reality, the shinobi collapsed, weakened beyond recovery. Within mere seconds, she had been completely immobilized. My genjutsu strengthens with time. You have exactly 5 seconds to break free. If you fail, the illusion becomes absolute, Naruko stated calmly. Every sense is manipulated, making it impossible to escape once the limit is exceeded. The mind believes it's real. And that belief is what renders you powerless. She pulled the sword from her shoulder, wincing slightly as she caught her breath. The technique had drained a significant portion of her chakra. But there was no time to dwell on exhaustion. 28 enemies still stood before her. He defeated her. Just by looking at her. How is that possible? The remaining shinobi hesitated, uncertainty clouding their resolve. Naruko, however, remained steady, prepared for what came next. You all underestimate genjutsu far too much. It is one of the most efficient and discreet techniques available. Once mastered, it becomes a remarkably effective strategy, Naruko explained, her voice steady. In truth, she was stalling, buying herself precious moments to recover her energy. The opposing Iwa shinobi regrouped, launching an onslaught of boulders, kunai, and shuriken toward her. Naruko gazed up at the incoming barrage, her breathing heavy. I've relied on these eyes too much. They drain so much chakra, and the strain on my body is unbearable. I have to finish this quickly. She exhaled slowly, centering her focus despite the exhaustion overtaking her. With a quiet murmur, she activated her technique. Susanoo! She uttered, wincing as a sharp pain seared through her eyes. Her right hand instinctively moved to cover one. The spectral warrior materialized around her, shielding her from the incoming assault. Its form shifted, a towering skeletal figure, its eyes burning with ethereal flames, its dark frame exuding an overwhelming presence. The massive construct raised an arm to its mouth before exhaling an immense wave of fire. The Iwa shinobi were caught off guard, none had encountered Susanoo before, and they certainly hadn't anticipated such a devastating technique. The battlefield was engulfed in flames, leaving only 14 of them standing. Naruko, however, was struggling. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her entire body aching under the immense strain. Blood still trickled from a wound on her shoulder, slow to heal. Her vision blurred as her eyes throbbed with pain. Just a little more, she whispered, forcing herself to remain upright. With sheer determination, she poured the last of her strength into Susanoo, willing it to evolve further. The skeletal form was soon enveloped in muscle, its power intensifying. Bolts of lightning erupted from its hands, while fire surged from its mouth, creating powerful explosions across the battlefield. When the dust settled, Naruko fell to her knees, barely able to support herself. She coughed, her body trembling as she wiped away the blood trickling from her eyes. Her Susanoo dissipated, and her vision remained hazy, too strained to maintain her Sharingan any longer. The last of her opponents had been defeated. A few still remained, wounded and incapacitated, but Naruko lacked the strength to continue. Whether they succumbed to their injuries or were rescued was no longer her concern. Her vision wavered. She groaned in pain, attempting to stand, but her body refused to cooperate. "I need to leave." Before more arrive, she panted, teetering on the edge of unconsciousness. A familiar voice echoed in her mind. "Here, let me lend you a hand, Kit." A small, weary smile crossed Naruko's lips. "Thank you, Kurama." She felt the warm surge of chakra flow through her, knitting her wounds and replenishing her energy. Though exhaustion still weighed heavily on her, she forced herself to move forward. The battle had taken its toll, but she couldn't afford to stop now. With renewed resolve, she pressed on. Dear YouTube family, that's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more exciting videos. Your support means the world. Thank you. Anime Dreams.